She pretended to be pregnant, fooled everyone around her, but I knew her secret. When the truth came out, all hell broke loose in ways she never saw coming. But why did she do it? Hey, what's up? I'm Jake, 24, and honestly, I thought I had life all figured out. Fresh out of college, I landed this killer job that made all those sleepless nights worth it, scored a nice car, and even met this girl, Emma, who seemed straight out of a dream. She's 22, gorgeous, funny, and honestly, seemed like the type who'd swipe left on a guy like me. But here she was, acting like I was her whole world. Life felt like it was finally on track, like I'd hit some kind of invisible jackpot. You know when things are almost too good and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach that something's bound to go wrong? Yay, should have listened to that instinct. So it's a Friday night, we're at her place, just chilling. She's curled up next to me on the couch, and we're watching this horror movie that's cheesy enough to be funny. I'm all relaxed, half focused on the movie and thinking about what snacks we should order next. Out of nowhere, Emma goes dead silent, like not a single word. I glance over, expecting her to be all spooked by the movie, but no, she's just staring at me, intensely. Jake, she finally says, and her voice has that serious, don't laugh, this is not a joke tone. My heart skips a beat because, honestly, nothing good ever starts with a sentence like that. My mind's already spinning. Did I mess something up? Did I forget an anniversary or something? She looks me straight in the eye, her face dead serious, and says, "There's something I need to tell you." Now, there are about a million things she could be about to say. My mind is throwing out random worst-case scenarios, but pregnancy, not even on my radar. I must have stared at her like she'd just grown a second head, and she shifts uncomfortably. "So, I'm pregnant," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. And I just freeze, like complete system shutdown. No reboot, no loading screen, just pure shock. I mean, here I am, 24, still figuring out what I even want for breakfast half the time, and now I'm supposed to be thinking about diapers and baby names? Emma watches me, looking all vulnerable and emotional, probably hoping I'll say something profound or romantic, but all I manage is a half-mumbled, "Oh, wow, that's something." Not exactly the knight in shining armor reaction, right? I feel her disappointment radiating, but hey, what did she expect? This wasn't exactly on my 5-year plan. "Jake, say something," she whispers, eyes all glossy, looking like she's seconds away from either hugging me or slapping me. I swallow hard, trying to process. I mean, this is huge, like life-changing huge, I stammer, sounding about as clueless as I feel, and she just nods, probably trying to keep herself together while I'm still catching up with reality. I keep looking at her, trying to read her face, waiting for some kind of hint that this is just a prank, but no, she's dead serious. Inside, I'm spiraling, trying to wrap my head around this new reality that came crashing down out of nowhere. All I can think is, how the heck did I end up here? 1 minute, I'm chilling with my perfect girlfriend, thinking life's set, and now I'm potentially a dad? My mind's racing, trying to find some kind of silver lining, but all I feel is this pressure weighing down on me, like I just signed up for a role I never auditioned for. And looking at Emma's face, I can tell there's no going back. The second that word left her mouth, pregnant, it was like everything around me just spun. I felt the floor tilt, my mind blanking out like an old TV cutting to static. And there's Emma, looking right at me, with that strange blend of hope and nerves written all over her face. She's probably thinking I'm either about to sweep her off her feet with excitement or run for the hills. Guess which one I felt like doing. I tried to speak, but my brain couldn't seem to keep up. The best I managed was a half-coherent, wow, are you sure? Yeah, smooth, right? Not exactly the reaction you see in movies. She looked at me, her expression shifting like she was trying to process the fact that I wasn't exactly jumping for joy. Then, before I could even try to redeem myself, she did this tiny, heartbroken sigh and looked down, almost like she'd lost all hope in me. And right then, I felt this twist in my gut, like I was the worst person alive for not being thrilled. "I thought, you'd want this too," she murmured, her voice shaky, eyes shimmering like one of those dramatic scenes from a TV show. If there was an award for guilt tripping, she'd just taken the gold. So there I am, cornered and clueless. And because my mind's in full panic mode, I do the one thing that feels like a lifeline. Hey, let's figure things out, I stammer, desperately trying to keep the peace. And just like that, her whole face lights up. I'm talking full-on transformation. She went from tragic to ecstatic in seconds, like she'd just hit the jackpot. And me? I'm just there, nodding along like I'm totally on board, even though I had no clue what figuring things out actually meant. Next thing I know, she's launching into this whirlwind of plans. She starts talking about us moving in together, getting a bigger place, setting up a nursery. Yeah, a nursery. And, of course, wedding plans. Wedding. She's rattling off color schemes and dress ideas, while I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea of becoming a dad. Forever seemed like a pretty big word for a guy who was just trying to make it through the month without losing his mind. But look, I'm not heartless. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who bails the second things get complicated. So, even though my head was screaming, "What are you doing?" I found myself nodding, saying things like, "Yeah, that sounds nice," or "We'll figure it out," hoping it would buy me some time to process this whole new reality. And just like that, I was strapped into a roller coaster I hadn't signed up for. I could feel my life twisting and turning into something I didn't even recognize, and the craziest part, I had no idea how to stop it. So, after Emma dropped the whole "I'm pregnant" bomb on me and things started spinning out of control, I knew I needed to talk to someone who could bring me back to earth. My best friend Dave was the obvious choice. He's the type who usually just laughs things off and gives the "it'll be fine" vibe, which was exactly what I needed right then. So, I gave him a call, hoping he'd somehow make me feel less like I was about to lose my entire freedom. I met him at this diner we always hit up, figuring some greasy food, and his typical laid-back attitude would put things into perspective. But as soon as I started talking, Dave went all serious. He just sat there, giving me this dead-eyed look, like he was processing a tragedy. "Dude, this is huge," he said, with this intensity that totally threw me off. He leaned in, hands folded, and dropped the line that hit harder than I expected. "Bro, you're about to be a dad. Are you ready for this?" I shrugged, playing it cool on the outside while my brain was doing flips. "I mean, yeah, I guess," I mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Truth? I had no idea if I was ready. I mean, who is ready for that? Dave kept pressing, saying stuff like, "This is your life now, man. You gotta get it together." For the first time ever, he sounded more like a parent than a buddy, which only made me feel worse. Even my friends were starting to see me as dad before I'd fully processed it myself. The next few weeks flew by, and I couldn't shake this feeling that everyone around me was running on some strange script, like they all got the memo on this life-changing event and were just going with it. Emma was in full mom mode, throwing out baby name ideas like she was picking out paint colors. She'd get this dreamy look in her eye and say things like, "What do you think of Olivia?" Or maybe Ethan if it's a boy. I'd just nod, totally on autopilot, while my mind was somewhere else, still trying to catch up. Then there was my mom. She was ecstatic. I mean, she was calling me every day, talking about how she couldn't wait to be a grandma. "Emma's a keeper," she'd say every time we talked, as if I hadn't already heard it 1,000 times. She'd go on and on about how Emma would make a perfect mom, about how she just knew we'd be a great family. It felt like everyone was ready to welcome this new reality with open arms. Everyone but me. And then there were Emma's friends. She'd bring them up constantly, telling me how excited they were for her, how they couldn't wait to be aunties. They'd congratulate me in passing, with these wide grins that felt almost too eager. Like, weren't we the ones who were supposed to be overwhelmed? But no, they were practically planning the baby shower already, like it was the best news they'd ever heard. I wanted to believe it too, to get swept up in the excitement. But something kept tugging at me. There was this small, nagging voice in the back of my mind that just wouldn't quit. It was like a riddle I couldn't solve, a puzzle with one piece missing. Every time I looked at Emma, I tried to shake off the doubt, tell myself I was just overthinking. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't quite add up. Things were already feeling off, but then they just started getting plain weird. Out of nowhere, Emma developed these pregnancy cravings. She'd be sitting there on the couch, talking about how she had to have pickles or peanut butter at, like, midnight. Now, I get that cravings are a thing, But then she drops the bomb that she can't even look at coffee anymore. Emma, the girl who practically lived on coffee. She used to down 3 cups before noon. Suddenly, she's acting like even the smell of it makes her sick. Right then, a little alarm started going off in my head. But what really set me off was the whole doctor situation. I mean, the first time she skipped an appointment, she told me she was just too tired to go. Fair enough, I thought. Pregnancy can't be easy. But then it happened again. And this time, she told me it was because the clinic had overbooked and she couldn't get a slot. No big deal, she said, waving it off like it was nothing. Now, I tried to keep my cool, not wanting to look like I was doubting her. But when the 3rd appointment in a row got canceled, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She gave me this same line about being too tired or the doctors being too busy. I mean, really? I was starting to feel like every time I looked at her, there was something she wasn't telling me. So that night, I decided to bring it up. Casual, nothing too intense. We were watching TV, and I turned to her, trying to keep my voice as neutral as possible. Hey, Emma, about the doctor's appointments. You think maybe we should try a different clinic? She looked at me, and I swear, for a split second, there was a flicker of something in her eyes, like she'd been caught off guard. But just as fast, she plastered on this innocent, almost amused smile. Jake, you're being paranoid, she laughed, brushing it off like I'd just asked her if aliens were real. I'm fine. The baby's fine. You're just stressed out, she said, giving me this comforting pat on the arm. It was the same kind of smile she used when I'd freak out over a bad day at work or stress about my bills. But this wasn't work stress or money problems. This was supposed to be our future. And as much as I wanted to believe her, something about her reaction didn't sit right. It felt too smooth, too practiced. Dave's words echoed in my mind. Are you ready for this? But now, that question didn't just mean being ready to be a dad. It meant being ready for whatever game Emma might be playing. I tried to shake off the doubts, but they clung to me. Every little thing she did started feeling suspicious, like she was putting on a show, and that voice in my head was getting louder, practically screaming that something wasn't adding up. But what was I supposed to do? It felt like I was on the edge of some huge revelation, but every time I reached for it, it slipped through my fingers. All I knew was I needed to be on guard. All right, so here's how it went down. One day, Emma told me she'd be out for the afternoon catching up with friends. Normally, I'd just kick back and enjoy a few hours to myself, maybe catch up on a game or two. But that nagging feeling I'd been having, it wasn't letting up. I couldn't shake the thought that something was seriously off. And yeah, maybe it was a little paranoid, but I figured why not take a look around, just to see if I could ease my mind, or confirm what my gut was screaming at me, so I started digging. Not exactly a moment I'm proud of, but desperation does weird things to people. I went through her drawers, trying to stay as organized as possible so she wouldn't notice anything out of place. Nothing seemed suspicious at first, just the usual stuff. But then, right at the bottom of one drawer, buried under some old papers, I found it. A crumpled pamphlet from a women's clinic. I held it in my hands, trying to figure out why she'd hide it like that. I thought maybe it was just some informational brochure, but curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the pamphlet, and my heart just about stopped. The title, A Guide to Faking Pregnancy Symptoms. Right there, staring back at me in black and white, I felt my whole world spin. It was like someone had just punched me in the gut. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or an innocent little white lie. She'd gone out of her way to research how to fake an entire pregnancy. And here I was, thinking I was about to be a dad, planning for a future that wasn't even real. My mind went into overdrive, and a wave of anger washed over me. I mean, who does that? How twisted do you have to be to play with someone's life like that? All those conversations, all those dreams she'd been building up, it had all been a show, a lie, wrapped up with a nice bow just to keep me close. I could feel betrayal clawing at me, my fists clenching as I pictured her face. So calm, so convincing, every time she'd reassured me that everything was fine. But as much as I wanted to storm out and confront her right then and there, I knew I had to think this through. A part of me wanted her to feel the same shock, the same drop in her stomach that I'd just felt. I didn't want a simple confrontation. I wanted her to feel the weight of every single lie she'd spun. I closed the pamphlet, carefully placed it back exactly where I found it, and left her room like I'd never been there. I'd stumbled onto a truth I wasn't ready for, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Once I knew the truth, it was game on. For the next week, I played my role to perfection, the caring, supportive boyfriend, totally in awe of this miracle she was carrying. I complimented her on how strong she was, talking up how excited I was for the whole journey. I had to keep my poker face solid because every time I looked at her, all I could see were the lies. But hey, sometimes you have to play the fool to catch one. So one evening, I decided to up the ante. Casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, I suggested we go for a surprise ultrasound together. I hit her with, "Hey babe, wouldn't it be amazing to see the baby together? Like a little memory we can look back on." I watched her face closely, and right then, I saw her confidence crack. She shifted in her seat, fidgeting with her sleeve, her eyes darting away from mine. "Oh, yeah, that would be nice," she stammered, clearly trying to come up with something to dodge the idea. She mumbled about wanting the first ultrasound to be special and private, something she could experience on her own. Her excuses were getting weaker by the second, and I was loving every bit of it, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. I pressed a little harder, acting all disappointed, saying how much it would mean to me to be there for her and the baby. She looked trapped, like a deer caught in headlights, scrambling for anything that might sound believable. Finally, after fumbling through a few lame excuses, she cracked. She suggested, "How about I go by myself and then I can surprise you with the ultrasound picture?" Her voice was shaky, her smile a little too forced, like she was trying to sell me on some grand romantic idea. I kept my face as neutral as possible, nodding along like it was the sweetest idea I'd ever heard. "Yeah, sure, that sounds amazing," I said, barely able to contain the smirk forming in my mind. I had her right where I wanted her. She thought she'd managed to dodge another bullet, but little did she know I was already planning my own little surprise for her. This time, I wasn't going to sit back and let her pull the strings. The trap was set, and all I had to do was wait. The day finally came. Emma had set it up perfectly. She was going to the clinic for her ultrasound, and I was supposed to wait for her big surprise. But I had other plans. I called up Dave and told him, "You're driving me to that clinic. We're ending this today." We pulled up at the clinic, and I sat there watching the door like a hawk, waiting to catch her. 10 minutes turned into 20, then 30. No Emma. The clock ticked, and my patience wore thinner by the second. Finally, I'd had enough. "That's it," I muttered, fists clenched, and told Dave to drive me back to her place. I stormed up the steps, hoping to find her there, but her apartment was empty too. An hour later, Emma strolls in like nothing's wrong, a smug little smile on her face, clutching an ultrasound picture that looked so fake, you could probably make a better one in 5 minutes with a printer and some stock images. She holds it up like it's her golden ticket. "Surprise!" she says, beaming. I took a deep breath, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "Emma," I said, my voice dead calm. "Cut the act." Her smile faded, and she looked at me, trying to play innocent. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the pamphlet I'd found, the one with "How to Fake Pregnancy Symptoms" written all over it, and tossed it on the table between us. Her face went pale. She stammered, her eyes darting from the pamphlet to me. "Jake, it's not what you think." She tried, but there was no covering up this mess. Finally, she switched tactics, practically pleading. "I did it because I love you. I thought this was the only way to keep us together." I just stared at her, feeling a mix of disappointment and frustration I couldn't even put into words. "Emma, you don't fake an entire pregnancy to keep someone around. That's not love. That's manipulation." I could see she was scrambling, desperate to find some way to talk her way out of it, but I was done. "Pack your stuff," I said, my voice cold. "I don't want to see you here when I get back." She stood there, wide-eyed, but I turned and walked out, leaving her to deal with the mess she'd created. The breakup was every bit as messy as you'd expect. Emma wasn't about to go down quietly. Oh no. She called, texted, even showed up at my place a few times, throwing every excuse in the book at me. She tried the classic, "I was just lost" line, talking about how she wanted us to be together forever and how this whole fake pregnancy scheme was some kind of proof of her love. But every time I looked at her, all I could feel was this overwhelming disgust. The girl I thought I knew was just a stranger, wrapped up in layers of lies. No matter what she said, I knew there was no going back. Trust wasn't something you could just glue back together. Every sweet moment, every memory felt tainted. I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to see that if she'd gone this far just to keep me around, she'd go even further next time. So I shut it down, blocked her number, cut her off, and finally let myself start moving on. A few weeks later, I got a call from a mutual friend who'd heard the whole story, and that's when I learned the real kicker. Emma had done this before. Apparently, her last boyfriend had gone through the same pregnancy surprise, only he didn't catch on until he was practically kneeling with a ring in his hand. It was her twisted, one-size-fits-all plan for love. She didn't want a relationship. She wanted control. Walking away wasn't easy. It's hard to come to terms with the fact that someone you cared about could lie like that. But I realized one thing. Dodging Emma was like dodging a bullet, or more accurately, a ticking time bomb. Sure, my heart was a bit shattered, but at least now I was free from the drama, the games, and the constant guessing. And that was worth every second of the fallout.